Hey guys! So we are going to continue today looking at our essential knowledge for Unit 3. Today we're going to kind of focus on population pyramids and we're going to do another practice FRQ. I know you guys are probably tired of seeing FRQs this week, but it really is going to be what we focus on from now until you take your AP test. It's the 31st right now, so we should be finding out about the dates for your AP test soon, within the next like 5 days or so. And as soon as I get those updates, I'll get those out to you guys as well. So we're talking about age structure diagrams today, just kind of reviewing those. So remember that population growth rates can be interpreted from age structure diagrams by the shape of the structure. So whatever the pyramid looks like can kind of give you some insight on what's going on with the populations in a country. So we're moving on from population ecology to actual human populations right now because we did them both in one unit. So a rapidly growing population will, as a rule, have a higher proportion of younger people compared to stable or declining populations. And remember, you can kind of glean that information from the shape of a population pyramid. Okay, so you can see it as age structure diagrams or population pyramids. The names are kind of interchangeable. You just have to know what's happening in each one. Okay, so let's take a look at the different types really quickly just to review. So remember, there are 3 different age groups for each of these pyramids. So at the bottom in red here, we've got our pre-reproductive age, which goes from about 0 to 15. Now, obviously, 15 is a reproductive age because that's the time when typically most females are fertile. But, in developed countries, typically, especially in the United States, women aren't having children until their, 20s, 30s. But in other countries, some women do have children very early on. So our pre-reproductive age here is in red from 0 to 15. And then our reproductive age is going to be from 16 on up to 45. And then our post-reproductive age will be from about 45 or 46 on up. So post-reproductive age is about when women are going through menopause. Men are fertile for a long time, but we say post-reproductive age because that's pretty much when women have gone through menopause, they're not as fertile, and then men are typically reproducing past those ages as well. So if we take a look at these structures, we've got an increasing population on the very left. So these are going to be characteristics of developing countries. Women don't have access to birth control. They don't have access to education. So lots of women have children or multiple children. So we see a very wide base. It follows the typical pyramid structure because there's a lot of children being born, but then there's not as many people living to be older as we get to the top. And that's because, there's not as much access to health care, maybe not as much access to clean sanitation in an area. So we just don't see as many people or as many individuals live to be older. An increasing slowly population is in the middle, or it's that second one from the left, and it still follows that kind of pyramidal shape. It's just, this country is probably in transition to being more developed. They have, women are having less children, so there's not as much of a population boom. A stable population here, third from the left, is a little bit more rectangular. So your stable populations, your total fertility rate is pretty much equaling your death rate. We see a lot more individuals that are living to be older. This is going to be a developed nation where there's access to healthcare, women have access to education. And the United States would be an example of a stable population right now, but we could be we're stable mostly because we have a lot of immigration. So women in the United States are not having as many children, but we do have a stable overall population because remember that immigration and immigration also influence population as well. And then finally, we have a decreasing structure, which is kind of like the pyramid that flipped on its head, where we've got very small amounts of children being born on the bottom, so not many individuals in that pre-reproductive age, but then we've got a lot of people at the top where they're living to be older. And this is going to be indicative of countries such as China. So China is or Japan, I'm sorry, not China. Japan is experiencing a decreasing population. Again, access to healthcare, better sanitation. They're definitely a developed country. And the issue with decreasing populations is that you see all of these individuals living to their post-reproductive age, and you have so many individuals living to be older, but there's not enough individuals of working age and younger people to kind of take care of the seniors. So that is kind of an issue that comes with a decreasing population. Today we're also going to review total fertility rate, and then that's going to be it. So remember, your total fertility rate, or your TFR, is just the average number of children born per female, okay? It can be affected by the age at which females have their first child, educational opportunities, access to family planning, so access to birth control, and then government acts and policies. So remember, one of those government acts that we talked about when we talked about population was the single child rule. So, families can only have one child to avoid population increase, right? It's a government act. And then if you have more than one, typically you're fined a certain amount. I think China has gone to a 2-child act now rather than the 1. But then that has, unintended consequences, such as mass killings of girls, because, girls can't carry on family names in paternal societies. So if you can only have one child, a lot of families really wanted a boy so that the boy could, carry on the family name. But then that's an issue, because if everybody has boys, they're not going to be able to grow up and reproduce anyway. So there are just some unintended consequences of that in an effort to reduce population. If your fertility rate is at replacement levels, a population is considered relatively stable, and that's what we saw in our population pyramids. It was the third one from the left. Factors associated with infant mortality rates include whether mothers have access to good health care and nutrition. Changes in these factors can lead to changes in infant mortality rates over time. So typically in developing countries, there are a lot of children being born because there's no access to, healthcare or contraceptives. But also, if there's no access to good nutrition and healthcare, we also see a higher instance of infant mortality. And then replacement fertility is just when the TFR keeps the size of the population stable. And right now, replacement fertility is around a 2.1. So on average, every woman would need to have 2 children in order to keep the population stable. Now, we know that there are people that are above that and below. Some women have multiple children, more than 2. Some have less than 2. So on average, per woman, replacement fertility is 2, around 2. All right, guys, so that is your chunk of review for Unit 3 populations today over population pyramids. Go ahead and go take a look. There are 2 assignments for today. One should only take you about 5 minutes. It's just looking at some population pyramids and then saying what kind of country that those pyramids are indicative of. Remember, developing countries will tend to have a larger base, whereas developed countries will have a smaller base, and that's due to women having access to contraceptives, education, healthcare, and so they're not having as many children. And also look at the top of the pyramid. If you see more individuals living to be older, that's going to be an indication of a more developed country. So go ahead and go take a look at that. Do that first assignment, and then the second one is an FRQ. It's set up to where you can answer it straight in Canvas. You don't have to write it down or anything. But take a look at that, get it submitted. If you have any questions, let me know. And then we will be setting up a Zoom meeting soon. So I'm aiming for this Friday. I'm hoping that we can just kind of get on and touch base and talk to each other and see how you're doing this week with your assignments. But until then, good luck. If you guys need anything, let me know.